Today's lesson is on adaptations. So the aim of the lesson is to be able to describe how animals have adapted to their environment. So you're going to need the assignment up next to you, ready to work through questions as we go through the video. So first I want you to pause the video and work your way through the do now activity. So you need to think about how a polar bear survives in the cold and write down any ideas you have and then come back to the video. On the screen is the key words for today's lessons. They are marine, physiology, morphology, and adaptation. So we first need to understand what an adaptation is. So even closely related species can show difference because through natural selection, animals adapt to their environment. Adaptations are special characteristics that have developed to help an organism survive. For example, we have adaptations to the physical appearance. This is an example of morphology. Adaptations to their internal systems is physiology. And an adaptation that changes how an organism acts is a behavioural adaptation. So organisms that live in one particular habitat show many specific adaptations for that environment. However, if an organism lives in a variety of different habitats, they show less specific adaptations. There are some adaptations that are very common amongst animals. For example, adaptations for camouflage, to help blend in with their environment to avoid prey, predators even, or to sneak up on their prey. So this is an example of a chameleon blending into his environment. You also have adaptations for their climate. So animals need to control their body temperature and their water content to survive. So that is really important they adapt to the climate they're in. And then we can have adaptations for catching prey or avoiding predators. For example, in the picture you can see a cheetah running very fast because it has long legs. This is an adaptation to catching its prey. We're first going to talk about adaptations in the marine environment, specifically in sharks. So as you can see from the picture, sharks have a streamlined shape. This reduces friction as they move through the water, and this is an example of a morphological adaptation. Their fins provide stability, power, and control. Again, an example of a morphological adaptation. Their gills have a large surface area so oxygen can be extracted from the surrounding water, again being morphological. They do, however, have more specific adaptations to aquatic life because they are a predator. For example, their specialized sense organs can detect movement, sound, and electrical fields of other organisms. This is an example of a physiological adaptation. Their silver colouring underneath their belly works as a camouflage, and this is morphological. They have very sharp teeth that are constantly replaced, again being morphological. And finally, their highly sensitive sense of smell can detect drops of blood from miles away. This is a physiological adaptation. So now I want you to pause the video and work your way through the questions that are on the screen. And you can fill them in on your assignment. Okay, so the first one you should have put morphology. So adaptations of an organism's physical appearance is part of their morphology. So for the second one, you should put physiology. Adaptations that involve internal system of an organism refers to their physiology. For the third one, it would be behaviour. Adaptations that control how an animal acts are part of their behaviour. So what are the three types of adaptation that are common amongst organisms? You should put camouflage, adaptations to their climate, and adaptations that help them catch prey or avoid predators. And what are write two morphological and physiological adaptations of a shark. For morphological, you could put any of these. And for physiological, you could put specialized sense organs or highly sensitive sense of smell. Okay, so we now have another example of a predator and how they adapted, but this one is on land. So the tiger. The tiger is active at night when its eyesight gives an advantage over its prey. The stripes break up the body outline to prey and are less likely to see the tiger. So the prey are less likely to see the tiger. The eyes are at the front of the head give good depth perception for catching prey, as well as helping to see in the dark, and their sharp teeth help kill prey. Their large claws are for catching and killing the prey, and their powerful leg muscles help to chase. Their tail aids balance when running. So we're now going to talk about adaptations for cold climates. So Arctic winter can dip to minus 51 degrees Celsius, and in the warmest months it's only between 10 degrees Celsius and 0 degrees Celsius, and it's often permanently covered in snow. This makes it a very harsh environment for animals to live in. So, Arctic animals have to keep themselves warm if they want to survive. So heat is lost from the surface of their body, especially skin, but it's fine because they've been adapted. They have adapted many characteristics to help them survive. So I want you to watch the video and make notes on adaptations for the polar bear.
Reduced vegetation make it difficult for animals to survive in polar environments, but some, like the polar bear, have evolved to cope. In order to retain heat, they have a thick layer of fur, a 10-centimetre layer of insulating fat, and small ears. Their black nose and foot pads absorb sunshine and help to warm them. You would think it would be an issue, but to avoid overheating, they move slowly and rest often. And their white colour against the snow and ice acts as camouflage when they are hunting. Their wide paws and claws are adapted for swimming, catching prey, and digging dens in the snow. Now, there's no prize for guessing which bird loves the cold polar regions. Yep, it's the penguins. Found in the southern hemisphere.
Okay, so from the video you should have got that polar bears have a thick layer of fur and a thick layer of insulating fat, also known as blubber. This helps keep them warm. Their small ears reduce surface area where heat can be lost, and their black nose and paw pads absorb sun to heat up the body. Their white fur acts as camouflage when hunting, and their paws and claws are adapted for swimming, hunting, and digging dens. Digging dens is also an example of behavioural adaptation. So some other adaptations of cold climate animals, which are also true for polar bears, are that they have thick, oily fur coats. This helps shred water after swimming to reduce heat loss. Their large, furry feet distribute their weight and increases grip on the ice. And they often have a longer snout for a better sense of smell. Their rounder body shape produce a large volume to surface area, which helps reduce heat loss. And many of them also change colour in the summer and through seasons. So I now want you to pause the video and research one of these Arctic animals and write down 2 adaptations and why they have them. So go onto Google and research either adaptations for the seal, Arctic fox, or killer whale, and write down why they are useful. We may have already talked about these adaptations also for polar bears because they have similar ones. Okay, we're now going to talk about hot climate adaptations. So these are talking about environments where they reach very high temperatures and have little water. Organisms need to maximise heat loss and retain water. So you need to watch the video of the camel adaptations and write down the adaptations that you hear.
Camels are very well adapted to live in the desert, which is hot and dry during the day, but cold at night. They have adapted thick fur on the top of their body for shade, but thin fur everywhere else to maximise heat loss. A large surface area to volume ratio also helps to keep them cool, because heat has more places to escape from. But camels have adapted to tolerate body temperatures of up to 42 degrees Celsius. It's actually a myth that camels can store water in their humps, but they can go for a very long time without drinking water, and they can drink up to 46 litres in one session. They lose very little water through perspiration because their body's temperature changes throughout the day, so there is no need to perspire. They also lose very little through urination because their kidneys concentrate urine. Their hump is actually a fat store, which can be respired to release water, and this allows them to go a long time without food, which is scarce. Camels have adapted to have very large flat feet to spread their weight on the sand, and skin between their toes helps to stop them sinking. They also have 2 sets of eyelashes and large slit-like nostrils to keep the sand away from their face.
Okay, as we saw in the video, camels can tolerate body temperatures up to 42 degrees Celsius. So, let's start with their fur. Camels have thick fur on the top for shade, but the fur around their body is very thin to maximise heat loss. Their wide feet are used to spread the weight, and the skin between the toes helps them stop sinking in the sand. They have humps of fat stores which can respire and release water, and they can also go a long time without water. Their kidneys produce very concentrated urine to reduce water loss, and they don't sweat, reducing water loss through perspiration. Their slit-like nostrils and 2 rows of eyelashes help to keep sand out. So I now want you to pause the video and make sure you have all the adaptations for a camel written down. Okay, so we're now going to work through some exam questions on adaptations. So let's start by reading through it and highlighting the key bits of information. Highlighting the key bits of information in an exam question is very helpful as it stops you missing out any key information or answering the question incorrectly. So desert animals. Are adapted to survive very hot, very dry and hot conditions. So they're nocturnal, so active during the dawn and dusk. They do not sweat or only sweat after a significant increase in body temperature. Others have adapted in more extreme ways, with organs such as the heart and liver shrinking at the height of the dry season, reducing the energy demand for these organisms. Suggest how some adaptations described above help the desert animals survive in these conditions. Sorry, I managed to delete the highlighted, so I just re-highlighted the different bits. Okay, so I want you to have a go on your own, but I'm just going to point out some different things that you could focus on as suggestions. So there are many are nocturnal. So think about what part of the day is hotter and why being nocturnal would be useful. Some don't sweat, so this is focusing on water and retaining water. So those are the 2 clues I'm going to give you. So now you can have a go at your own answering those and then come back to the assignment. Come back to the video. Okay, so the next question is focusing on cold climate animals. So organisms have adaptations that enable them to survive in extreme conditions. The photograph below shows the Arctic fox. This fox lives in the Arctic where it is very cold. Suggest 2 ways in which the Arctic fox have adapted for life in very cold conditions. Explain how each adaptation helps survive. So you need to work through and give me 2 examples and explain why. I'm not going to give you any help on this one, so just work through in your own time and then remember to submit your assignment.